All right, so next we have question 1, part C. The article, "Poll finds most opposed return to draft, wouldn't encourage children to enlist," reports that in a random sample of 1,200 American adults, 630 answered yes to the following question. If the military draft were reinstated, would you oppose drafting women as well as men? The data were used to test our null hypothesis, p equals 0.5, and our alternative hypothesis, p is greater than 0.5. And the null hypothesis was rejected. Based on the result of the hypothesis test, what can you conclude about the proportion of American adults who oppose drafting women if a military draft were reinstated? All right, so important sentence here was that the null hypothesis was rejected. Since the null hypothesis was rejected, we know that there's strong enough evidence that our null hypothesis is not true. Now our next step is going to look for what the experimenters tested for. As we can see, they tested out of 1,200 Americans, 630 of them answered yes to the question. So 630 out of 1,200 would be 0.525. Okay, so now let's look through the answers, if you have it with you. All right, the first bullet says there is not strong enough evidence that the proportion of American adults who oppose drafting women if a military draft were reinstated is less than 0.5. As we saw, there is strong enough evidence to oppose the null hypothesis. So the first one would not be true because there is strong evidence. As well as the second one, it says there is not strong enough evidence. That one is also true. So the third one, there is strong evidence that the proportion of American adults who oppose drafting women if a military draft were reinstated is more than 0.5. So 630 out of 1,200 answered yes, they would oppose drafting women. And that is 0.525. So the experiment tested that more than half were opposed to the idea. Now, since more than half were opposed to the idea, they utilized this data to reject the null hypothesis. Since they utilized the data that more than half of the population rejected it, then it's safe to say that there is strong evidence that the proportion of American adults who oppose drafting women if military were reinstated is more than 0.5.